G'day guys, and welcome back to the Daily Discomfort podcast. Today is episode number 6 of the podcast, and we're going to be talking about pain versus pleasure. So in last week's episode, we explored discipline versus motivation. And I think a fundamental piece of knowledge or understanding that we need to have if we are to achieve any sort of goals that we have in our life, if we are to change any sort of limiting habits and to be able to create new, more productive habits, we need to create a sense of awareness about what actually drives the behaviors that we have on a daily basis, understanding how pain influences action and how pleasure influences action, and also the homeostatic balance that we need to have between both from an evolutionary standpoint for us to not only survive but thrive in life in the modern world. So this was also the theme of discussion at the Daily Discomfort Run Club, where we set the topic theme and we go around the circle and we talk about how that topic is relevant to us with some specific questions. So it was interesting to see the different points that people had, and I'm sure for everyone that was there, we could relate to almost everything that another guy was mentioning. So some of the topics that were discussed around the circle were pain being caused by financial stress, whether it was a loss of job or seeking out a new job, and how that then drives whatever behaviors to actually obtain that new job, but also just starting to gain a little bit of curiosity about what you're actually doing and what you want to spend the remainder of your working career doing. Another topic that came up was gaming and porn, something that not a lot of guys will talk about, being on the second subject there, but something that we can always see as a pleasure. It's one of those things that we can use to wind down when it comes to gaming, porn, when it comes to scrolling your phone, watching movies, watching TV, eating food. These are usually those habits that are going to start to occur when you're avoiding the pain of whatever stress, emotion, anxiety, mental health issues that you're being challenged with currently in your life. It could just be the stress that comes with work. It could be relationship stress. It could also just be a disconnection with yourself and not having an understanding of where your emotions are coming from, or not being able to deal with them, so you choose just to numb yourself through some of these habits. Another point that came up for a few of us was actually body image or body dysmorphia. In my own personal experience, it's been quite interesting at times that the most successful I've been with getting lean, getting my body fat down and getting into good nick was pretty much because I was at a point where I had a low sense of self-confidence based on how I looked. I let myself go, I let my eating go a little bit, and it resulted in a point where I'd started to add on a bit of weight, bit of body fat, and then the pain of seeing that, not being confident with how I looked, is what drove that. Now, for a lot of guys, this is a common theme when it comes to body image. They get in the relationship, they might let themselves go a little bit, the relationship breaks down over time, and one of the first things they look at doing is increasing or improving the way that they look by means of going to the gym and starting to look after their nutrition. Something that we need to be extremely aware of here is the why behind us doing that. We all know that we should be looking after our health and fitness, but when it comes to basing our self-worth off the way that we look, we need to be aware of if we're being driven by pain or if we're having more healthy or balanced intentions that are leading our behaviors when it comes to looking after our health and fitness. Another theme that came up today was loneliness. This is obviously a pain point for a lot of people and a lot of men in this day and age, young and old. So on this point, the person had talked about at this point not being in a relationship for a long time, and whilst they've got a lot of friends and they're coming and being a part of this community, there is times where it is nice to have a partner there. However, what we're going to discuss next week is going to lean into this topic a little bit more when we discuss being alone versus being lonely and the difference between those two things. And that's going to be in light of Loneliness Awareness Week in Australia. Now, one thing I want to get clear from this point in is that pain and pleasure both have a place. If we didn't feel pain, if we didn't experience stress or anxiety, if we didn't experience that in regards to financial stress, not being able to pay the bills, if we didn't get sick, if we didn't get issues as a result of not looking after ourselves by means of exercising, eating well, getting enough sleep, we wouldn't actually have the drive to change things. So pain can actually be one of our most powerful tools for improving as men and as women, if there are any ladies listening to this. So we need pain in our life. Now, obviously, it's in the name of the daily discomfort. We've got to be prepared to embrace discomfort, to embrace some pain and some suffering in our life. Now, on the other side of things, we need a balanced approach. We always talk about this when it comes to exercising, especially with nutrition, being able to eat a mainly healthy diet, but it's okay to go have the ice cream, have the pizza every now and again. The problem is, and what we mostly struggle with, is that balance. You get this one side of the internet who is saying that it always has to be the hustle and grind. You've always got to be disciplined. You've got to eat clean all the time. You've got to train 7 days a week, sometimes even twice a day. You can't be negative. You can't have any emotional release. You can't talk about your emotions. You can't be vulnerable with that. You've got to stay strong. You've got to be tough all the time. And then we see it from the other angle where we've always got to be open about our mental health, and we've always got to chat to people and be asking if everyone's okay. And then when we start to look at eating and exercise and indulging in things like watching TV, watching movies, playing games, these things start to become self-care at times. It's always going to be a balancing act, and for you as an individual, you've got to learn how to take with a grain of salt what you need for you given your individual context. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into defining what pain and pleasure is. So pain isn't purely physical discomfort. It's not going for the run or going to the gym. It can be emotional. It can be dealing with anger, dealing with sadness. If we look at it on a psychological level, it could be as simple as forcing yourself to learn something, or knowing that you need to learn something to help you improve in your career, or maybe just for your own personal development benefit. I find learning new skills, learning new things that I don't understand so well, and it can take me a lot of time to learn, to be one of the most challenging things that I do as an individual. I tend to like facing more physical discomfort through exercise because I've seen myself succeed in that a little bit more than I have on an academic level. To make it a bit more relatable, let's consider some of the pain that you might be dealing with at this point in your life, or that you've dealt with in the past. Going back to that topic of having financial stress, something that not a lot of guys will talk about together because they feel ashamed of it. For guys who need to lose a bit of weight, they need to lose a little bit of body fat, not just for confidence, but for their own health and longevity. What about the guys who have gone through the breakup or the divorce, or they're struggling in their relationship? That's painful. That's really hard on an emotional level. If you feel like you're alone, but you're actually in a relationship, you feel like your needs aren't being met, maybe you're not meeting the needs of your partner, and this has caused the relationship to start to break down over time, or if it's resulted in a breakup or the divorce, and then you're starting to beat yourself up, or maybe you're angry at the partner and you've got all this resentment there, and it's just a whirlwind that you can ruminate on day in, day out, and that distracts you from some of the other things that you'd like to be doing in your life, and it starts to affect the other relationships that you have with people around you, and affects the relationship that you will have in future. So pain is going to be experienced on a physical, psychological, and emotional level. Now the same goes for pleasure. Now when we think of pleasure, there's obvious assumptions that we're going to make. We think of nice tasting foods, we think of relaxing, maybe having a drink for anyone who partakes in drug use or has in the past. For anyone who's got any sort of addictions with porn, gaming, scrolling their phone, binge watching TV. I've experienced a few of these different things here. And again, when it comes to this balance side of things, it's not like they're all inherently bad. I don't want to be polarizing in that sense, but it's when we become reliant on these pleasurable activities and we seek these massive dopamine highs, it starts to desensitize us from everyday life and some of the normal things. A common theme I noticed in my life in the past when I was indulging in food, indulging in TV at night, it started to become this peak in my day. And so I wasn't enjoying my work as much. I wasn't enjoying other parts of my day. Or even when it came to training, I would be caffeinated, I'd have sugar in my system, I was blasting this aggressive or upbeat music. So again, just creating another massive peak in my day. So I'd have these massive peaks for training or these massive peaks at night. And in between, it meant that I had to pay the tax. I had to deal with the pain side of that, of feeling unmotivated at times to do work or to study and learn different things. It meant that I felt burnt out when it came to actually socializing, because I felt like I had no social battery. But the thing is that I was just so taxed from having all these peaks in my day and throughout the week that I felt like I just wanted to sit down and do nothing. On the other hand, I got addicted to those pleasures. I wanted to ride the high again. For many years, I isolated myself and I literally was just eating food, watching TV, watching movies, smoking weed at times, and that was my little escape from the world. And it wasn't a healthy relationship with food, with TV. As simple as it may be, it always comes down to that balance, and that's what we're going to talk about now. We always have this tendency to come back to homeostasis. We need to find our homeostatic balance. So when it comes to pain and pleasure, these are both phenomenons that are processed in one part of the brain. You may have heard the term before, pick your pain and pick your pleasure, but you're always going to be balanced back out. For example, if I choose the pleasure of sitting on the couch, skipping the gym and eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's, over time, what's going to happen is something that we should mention is that I'm going to start to want a bigger high. I'm going to want the better movie or the better TV episode to watch. I'm going to want a little bit more ice cream as I start to build up my tolerance to this and I start to seek more and more dopamine. Now, on the other hand, the tax that I've got to pay on this is the fact that if I'm not exercising and if I'm eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's every night, this means that I'm going to have these peaks and troughs and I'm going to be searching for this high. I'm going to be chasing the dragon each day. Now, what we need to remember is that if I'm becoming more sedentary and I'm eating more food, I'm going to start to get issues with how much weight I'm gaining, how much adipose or fat tissue that I've got in my body, which can start to lead to higher risk of diseases and health conditions. Not to mention the pain that I start to feel because I'm not happy with the way I look. I'm not going to be as confident in my relationship and anything that goes on in the bedroom when the clothes are off. Or if I'm single, I'm not going to be as confident in the dating scene trying to meet other people when I'm not actually confident how I physically appear. And not everyone's like that, but I know a lot of us guys are. So if we look at another example, what about the person that's always trying to put themselves through the ringer? They're always trying to work as hard as they can. They're putting a lot of demands on themselves physically and mentally. Over time, if you're putting yourself into these positions where there's so much energy required from the body and there's still dopamine required to take these actions, you're going to drop back to a baseline. And this is obviously where recovery comes in, taking time to do your breath work, get enough sleep in. Now, for a lot of guys, this is the cycle that they get into, this all in or all out approach. They'll hit a certain point where they feel enough pain, which is going to drive them to start to create this new crazy routine where they're going to be working super hard, training super hard. Maybe they start to sacrifice sleep, and then they start seeking out the pleasurable behaviors again. They start indulging back into the highly palatable foods. They start watching the porn again. They start gaming. They start watching TV. All these habits start to creep back in. Now, one thing that I want to make clear as well is that we can view pain or discomfort as stress. And what we know about stress is that we need it. We know we need to step out of our comfort zone. If we look at training at the gym or going for a run, we need to put our body through physical stress to receive whatever the adaptation may be, getting stronger, building muscle, becoming more durable or faster when it comes to our running. When it comes to work, you need to push yourself. You need to learn new things. If you're in a role where it requires you to make sales, you need to have uncomfortable conversations. You need to put yourself out there. On the other hand, when it comes to an emotional level, if you're someone that has numbed yourself in the past, once you start to actually process some of the emotions that you have, it can be quite confronting. If you haven't felt a lot of sadness or anger, because you usually just bottle it up since you're a young kid, once these things start to come back out and you're not used to dealing with those emotions, it's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel stressful and overwhelming. So to make this more direct, I want to get you to consider what are the things in your life currently, or what are the things in your life recently or in the past that have driven you to create change? Were your actions guided by pain? Was it the breakup? Was it the financial stress? Was it not being happy with the way that you looked? Was it having some sort of injury or illness that started to drive these behavioral changes in your life? Or if you're someone that is struggling or you were struggling at one point, what was guiding your actions and behaviors? Were you chasing pleasure? Were you not dealing and embracing the discomfort? Did you feel like you were lacking discipline at times and you started to lean into always staying within your comfort zone? Were you always seeking out pleasure through eating, alcohol, drugs, drinking, gaming, whatever it may have been? And also, like me, was this something for you where it started to become the peak of your day? You're always chasing the high and trying to chase the high again and again, chasing the dragon, so to speak. And then this started to cause those peaks and troughs in your day, where the highlight of your day then becomes sitting down at night, watching TV, eating the food, gaming, flicking on Pornhub, whatever it may have been. Now, personally, one of the hardest things that I've found is starting to see the pleasure on the other side of discomfort, on the other side of pain. And that can be seen in the feeling that you have of actually showing up to the gym or going for the run and then having that release of endorphins after it, and you're feeling really good, but you're also proud of yourself. But how do we actually look at that in the longer term? How do we know when we jump into this 12-week or 16-week program or challenge that we know that we're going to feel good at the end of it when we haven't got any evidence of it yet? If you're starting a business or you're starting some course of study, how can we stay committed throughout that process? How can we know that it's going to be a pleasurable experience at the end of it, that we can look back and go, that was well worth it, all the suffering that I had to endure or the pain that I had to endure throughout that? And if anything, it's going to be harder to take this approach of having the discipline between pushing yourself with the work that needs to be done and actually allowing yourself some pleasurable experiences, but moderating them so it's more sustainable over time. So if we know something is good for us, if we know we want to achieve said goal, how do we change our whole approach to this to becoming a better version of ourselves, improving our health, fitness, finances, knowledge-based relationships, whatever it may be? This is where I think it's as simple as creating that balanced approach, understanding that I need to embrace a certain amount of discomfort or suffering or pain during this process, whether it's the training, the discipline with the food, showing up for work, doing the study that you need to, having the conversation that you need to have, doing the journaling that you need to do, the breath work that you need to do, all these little commitments. Well, that's a whole lot of work, a whole lot of pain and discomfort initially. And even though there might be the reward of doing said action and getting the good feedback loop from that, we probably still need to balance it with some of these other things that we can enjoy, as long as it's not causing a negative impact to our life or limiting our rate of progress towards our goals. So as an example, as opposed to being the guy who just falls off the bandwagon because he's constantly in this cycle of all in and all out, you're trying to go overboard on the training and work side of things, and you're not actually allowing yourself to moderate any of these other little pleasures that help you to achieve that balance. What you're probably going to find is that you actually need more discipline to create that balance and create that moderation. And funnily enough, that's probably one of the underlying reasons that a lot of us struggle to have this balance, because it can be hard to have a little bit of the ice cream and not the whole pint. It can be hard to watch one episode and not watch 2 or 3. It can be hard to actually scroll your phone for 15 minutes and not 2 hours. And this is where I think there's a fundamental flaw when it comes to this motivational content out there. These guys are saying that you've got to be super disciplined and that you're only going to eat clean and you're only going to train hard every day. You're only going to work and you're going to sleep 6 hours a night. What about actually having the discipline to be able to have a more balanced lifestyle, actually doing some of the things that you enjoy doing as well, some of the things that are considered more pleasurable and more leisurable? Now, I'm not saying I'm at that point yet, because I think it's actually hard to get to the point where you start to achieve that nice balance. But I also think that this is one of the problems with our society at this point, and why we have such an issue with mental health and well-being in men and women, is because we move to other sides of this. We struggle to create that balance. It's either all in or all out. So to wrap this one up today, a couple of reflective questions for yourself to ask, maybe write down or note down on your phone. In what way does pain or pleasure drive my behavior? Ask yourself, am I the type of person that tends to go all in or all out? And you struggle to actually have that balance. You struggle to find moderation. From there, I would start to dive into it a little bit deeper by whatever means necessary. If that means writing it down a bit more, if that means talking to someone about it a little bit more, if things come up, if that means reading a book, reading the blog post, watching the video, listening to the podcast, so you can understand yourself, your psychology, and your behaviors a bit more, that's going to allow you to shape and change those behaviors moving forward. On a final note, this topic in itself, whilst it's not super in-depth, but just understanding or creating awareness around what drives your action. Is it pain or is it pleasure? And understanding that fundamentally what we want to get out of this is finding a balance, and that that's going to look different for any given individual based on what your goals are and what your circumstances are. It's also a simple way to understand why other people in your life are doing the things that they do. You can start to see why they behave the way they do, because they're either seeking pleasure or they're avoiding pain. Now that's a wrap for today, guys. Just a little message on the end here. If you are someone in the Brisbane open community and you like to come down and join us at the Daily Discomfort Run Club, we are holding an open session next Saturday, the 9th of August. With respect to Loneliness Awareness Week, we want to make this an open community event. You can get a bit of a taste of what it's like. If you're a guy, you're obviously welcome to come every week after that, but we are going to have guys and girls down for this event. There's going to be a social post coming out today and a few little social posts throughout the week to create a little bit more awareness on this topic, but also on the Run Club next Saturday morning. Also, I've got something exciting coming out in future, which I'll be working on over the weekend and next week. I'm going to be creating a 7-day breathe and reflect series. So I want to help you guys utilize the tool of breath work, not only to help you to regulate your nervous system, to improve your mental well-being, but also for anyone training out there to enhance your performance, your recovery from the training that you're doing, so you can get fitter and you can start to crush whatever goals that you're working towards. On the other hand, that reflection prompt is going to be something that's going to help you create more awareness. If you're someone like me who's felt very stuck, very lost at points, and you haven't got that sense of clarity of where you're going and what you're doing, sometimes just asking yourself a simple question, having a prompt there can be something that starts to shape that direction for you moving forward, give you that little bit more purpose. It can be very underestimated, but quite thought-provoking. A lot of us don't journal, a lot of us don't ask bigger questions at times and look at things with a bird's eye view. So if you follow me on YouTube or Instagram, stay tuned. I'll be releasing more about that in the coming weeks. That's all for today, guys. I'll see you guys in the next YouTube episode drop or the next podcast episode. See yas.